Acquiring social scripts. Significant behaviors such as violence usually have many determinants, making any single explanation an oversimplification. Asking what causes violence is therefore like asking what causes cancer. Those who study the effects of asbestos exposure on cancer rates may remind us that asbestos is indeed a cancer cause, albeit only one among many. Likewise, report Neil Malamuth and his colleagues, 1991-1995, several factors can create a predisposition to sexual violence. They include the media, but also dominance motives, disinhibition by alcohol, and a history of child abuse. Still, if media depictions of violence can disinhibit and desensitize, if viewing sexual violence fosters hostile, domineering attitudes and behaviors, and if viewing pornography leads viewers to trivialize rape, devalue their partners, and engage in uncommitted sex, then media influence is not a minor issue. Social psychologists attribute the media's influence partly to the social scripts, mental tapes for how to act provided by our culture they portray. When we find ourselves in new situations, uncertain how to act, we rely on social scripts. After so many action films, youngsters may acquire a script that gets played when they face real-life conflicts. Challenged, they may act like a man by intimidating or eliminating the threat. Likewise, after viewing the multiple sexual innuendos and acts found in most prime-time TV hours, often involving impulsive or short-term relationships, youths may acquire sexual scripts they later enact in real-life relationships. Kunkel et al., 2001, Sapolsky and Tabarlet, 1991. Music lyrics also write social scripts. In one set of experiments, German university men who listened to women-hating song lyrics administered the most hot chili sauce to a woman and recalled more negative feelings and beliefs about women. Man-hating song lyrics had a similar effect on the aggressive behavior of women listeners. Fisher and Gridemeyer, 2006. Might public consciousness be raised by making people aware of the information you have just been reading? See also Close-Up, Parallels Between Smoking Effects and Media Violence Effects. In the 1940s, movies often depicted African Americans as childlike, superstitious buffoons. Today, we would not tolerate such images. In the 1960s and 1970s, some rock music and movies glamorized drug use. Responding to a tidal change in cultural attitudes, the entertainment industry now more often portrays the dark side of drug use. In response to growing public concern about violence in the media, television violence levels declined in the early 1990s. Gerbner et al., 1993. The growing sensitivity to violence has raised hopes that entertainers, producers, and audiences might someday look back with embarrassment on the days when movies entertained people with scenes of torture, mutilation, and sexual coercion. Do video games teach or release violence? Violent video games became an issue for public debate after teen assassins in more than a dozen places seemed to mimic the carnage in the splatter games they had so often played. Anderson, 2004a. In 2002, two Grand Rapids, Michigan teens and a man in his early 20s spent part of a night drinking beer and playing Grand Theft Auto 3, using cars to run down simulated pedestrians before beating them with fists and leaving a bloody body behind. Kolker, 2002. Then they went out on a real drive, spotted a 38-year-old man on a bicycle, ran him down with their car, got out, stomped and punched him, and returned home to play the game some more. The man, a father of 3, died 6 days later. Interactive games transport the player into their own vivid reality. When youths play Grand Theft Auto San Andreas, they can carjack vehicles, run down pedestrians, do drive-by shootings, pick up a prostitute, have sex with her, and then kill her. When youths play such games, do they learn social scripts? Most abused children don't become abusive adults. Most social drinkers don't become alcohol dependent. And most youths who spend hundreds of hours in these mass murder simulators don't become teen assassins. Still, we wonder if, as research has shown, Passively viewing violence elevates aggressive responses to provocation and lowers sensitivity to cruelty. What will be the effect of actively role-playing aggression? Although very few will commit slaughter, how many will become desensitized to violence and more open to violent acts? Close-up. Parallels between smoking effects and media violence effects. Researchers Brad Bushman and Craig Anderson in 2001 note that the correlation between viewing violence and behaving aggressively nearly equals the correlation between smoking and lung cancer. They also note other parallels. Number 1. Not everyone who smokes gets lung cancer. Number 1. Not everyone who watches violence becomes aggressive. Number 2. Smoking is only one cause of lung cancer, although an important one. Number 2. Viewing violence is only one cause of aggression, although an important one. Number 3. The first cigarette can nauseate, but the sickening effect lessens with repetition. Number 3. The first violence exposure can upset, but the upset lessens with repetition. Number 4. The short-term effect of one cigarette is minor and dissipates within an hour or so. Number 4. One violent TV program can prime aggressive thoughts and behaviors, but the effect dissipates within an hour or so. Number 5. The long-term cumulative effect of smoking can be severe. Number 5. The long-term cumulative effect of viewing violence is increased likelihood of habitual aggression. Number 6. Corporate interests have denied the smoking lung cancer link. Number 6. Corporate interests have denied the viewing violence aggression link. 38 studies of more than 7,000 people offer some answers. Anderson et al., 2004. One study, Ballard and Wiest, 1998, observed a rising level of arousal and feelings of hostility in college men as they played Mortal Kombat. Other studies have found that video games can prime aggressive thoughts and increase aggression. Consider this report from Craig Anderson and Karen Dill, 2000. University men who have spent the most hours playing violent video games tend to be the most physically aggressive. For example, to acknowledge having hit or attacked someone else. In one experiment, people randomly assigned to play a game involving bloody murders with groaning victims, rather than to play nonviolent Myst, became more hostile. On a follow-up task, they also were more likely to blast intense noise at a fellow student. Those with extensive experience in violent video gaming also display desensitization to violent images, as shown by blunted brain responses. Bartholomew et al., 2006. We are what we repeatedly do. Aristotle. Studies of young adolescents by Douglas Gentile and his co-researchers, 2004 and 2007, further reveal that kids who play a lot of violent video games see the world as more hostile, get into more arguments and fights, and get worse grades. Those hours aren't spent reading or studying. But is this merely because naturally hostile kids are drawn to such games? No, says Gentile. Even among violent game players scoring low in hostility, 38% had been in fights. That figure is nearly 10 times the rate, 4%, found among their non-gaming counterparts. Moreover, over time, the non-gamers became more likely to have fights only if they started playing the violent games. Anderson and his colleagues, 2007, believe that, due partly to the more active participation and rewarded violence of gameplay, violent video games have even greater effects on aggressive behavior and cognition than do violent television and movies. Although much remains to be learned, these studies again disconfirm the catharsis hypothesis, the idea that we feel better if we blow off steam by venting our emotions. Playing violent video games increases aggressive thoughts, emotions, and behaviors. One video game company's CEO rationalizes that we are violent by nature and need release valves. It's a way to process violent feelings and anxieties through a fantasy medium, adds a prominent civil liberties lawyer in explaining her hunch that playing violent games calms violent tendency. Hines, 2004. Actually, expressing anger breeds more anger, and practicing violence breeds more violence. Tomorrow's games may have even greater effects. Social psychologists Susan Persky and Jim Blaskovich, 2005, created a violent video game for students to play on either a desktop computer or by putting on a headset and stepping into a virtual reality. As they predicted, the virtual reality more dramatically heightened aggressive feelings and behavior during and after the play. To sum up, research reveals biological, psychological, and social cultural influences on aggressive behavior. Like so much else, aggression is a biopsychosocial phenomenon. Figure 14.12.